August 19th, 1981. High noon, over the shimmering waters of the Gulf of Sidra. The Mediterranean sky is a hard, unforgiving blue, the kind that makes every edge razor sharp. Below, the sea glitters like broken glass in the sun. Far above it all, two UASs. Navy F-14 Tomcats prowl the edge of an invisible line the Libyans insist is real, the line of death across the Gulf of Sidra. In the lead aircraft, call sign Fast Eagle 102, Lieutenant Lawrence Music. Muchinsky feels the low hum of the engines through his seat, the subtle shiver of the airframe. Behind him, in the rear cockpit, radar intercept, Officer Lieutenant Commander James Amos Anderson is a calm voice in the headset, hands light but precise over the AWG-9 radar controls. Off his wing, Fast Eagle 107, crewed by Lieutenant Henry Hank Kleeman and his RIO Lieutenant David D.J. Venlet, holds formation, gray shapes against the sun. Wings swept forward in cruise configuration. You can almost taste the metallic tang of oxygen through the mask. Hear the steady rush of air over the canopy. The clipped naval voices crackling on the radio. They've been briefed. They know Sidra is a tinderbox. The Libyans have been buzzing U.S. reconnaissance flights for days. There's intelligence chatter that Soviet advisors are on the ground in Libya, watching, coaching, evaluating how their client pilots flying Soviet-built Sukhoi Su-22s perform against the Americans. Somewhere in a dim operations room in Libya, Soviet officers hunch over radar scopes. Listening to the same sky these Tomcat crews are cutting through, Fast Eagle 102's RIO speaks first. Contact, bearing 090, Angels Low, range 40. Muchinsky glances to his right. Tiny black specks on the horizon, growing. The radar confirms what his eyes already know. Aircraft, head on, closing fast. Fast Eagle 102, I've got 2 bogies, low and hot, no IFF. Anderson reports over the radio, voice level, professional. The controller back on the carrier group replies, Fast Eagle, continue to monitor. Rules of engagement, do not fire unless fired upon. The unspoken part hangs in the cockpit air, but if they fire, you finish it. The contacts resolve visually now. Dark shapes sliding against the glare of the sea. Su-22 fitter strike fighters blunt-nosed, single-seat, swept-wing attack jets. Libyan Air Force. Their approach is aggressive. Nose on, no attempt to turn away. On the ground, Soviet advisors stand behind Libyan controllers at their radar consoles, arms folded, listening to Arabic call signs and Soviet-made equipment sing. They've drilled these pilots for months. The Su-22s are fast at low level, rugged, well-armed. In theory, they can hold their own. In theory. In practice, they are flying straight toward the most advanced carrier-based fighter in the world. The range drops like a stone. 20 miles. 15. 10. Fast Eagle 102 bogies now 10 miles. Co-altitude. Still hot. Anderson says, you can hear the tension creep in, but only if you're really listening. Muchinsky's eyes flick to the left console. Weapons armed. His thumb rests near the missile selector, sidewinders on the shoulder pylons. Sparrows nestled under the belly. All live. Fast Eagle 102, you are cleared to arm. Do not repeat. Do not fire unless they fire first. Comes the order. The 2 formations close. 4 jets rushing at each other over international waters that one side insists are Libyan. The sky between them is shrinking by the second. At just a few miles, the Libyan lead Su-22 breaks slightly high, nose lifting, for the briefest heartbeat. There's a hesitation, then a sharp glint flashes from under its wing. Missile launch. Missile launch, someone shouts over the radio. A plume of smoke streaks away from the Libyan jet. The Soviets in the operations room lean in, trying to follow the tiny glowing point on their scopes. their assumptions about American reactions forming in real time. Up in the cockpit of Fast Eagle 102, everything contracts into instinct and training. The rules of engagement have just changed. For a split second, the sky is perfectly still. Then the Libyan missile blooms into a streak of white, clawing up toward Fast Eagle 102. Missile inbound, right side, low. Anderson snaps. Muczynski does not think in words. He moves. He slams the stick left and back, rolling the Tomcat hard, pulling the nose down toward the water. The G-forces pin him into the seat. The canopy fills with the violent smear of sea and ski trading places. The missile streaks past where they were a heartbeat ago, its seeker fooled by the sudden change in aspect and the sun glare off the water. Missile overshot. No track. No track. Anderson calls, eyes on the instruments, searching for any hint of the weapon trying to reattack. In those few seconds, the rules of engagement settle into something brutally simple. They have been fired upon. Now they respond. Fast Eagle 102 copy missile launch. You are cleared to engage. Comes the carrier controller. Voice tightly controlled. Muczynski levels out, hauling the Tomcat back up from its diving escape, the wings humming as the air bites into them. Ahead, the Libyan lead Su-22 flashes past, right to left, low, climbing slightly after its attack. Its wingman trails behind, a dark dart against the glare. Visual on both fitters. He calls. Lead is crossing in front, wingman following. On the wing, Fast Eagle 107 stays welded in support, Kleeman watching the angles open up. In the Soviet-watched operations room, a senior advisor narrows his eyes at the radar repeaters. The icons representing the Su-22s have passed the Americans, their vectors crossing. For a brief, hopeful moment, it looks like the Libyans have forced the Tomcats defensive. Americancy will disengage, one Libyan officer mutters. They do not like risk. The Soviet does not answer. He has studied the F-14, twin engines, massive pulse Doppler radar, long-range missiles, heavy training. He knows these are not simple patrol planes. Up in the sky, Muczynski now has the Libyan leader crossing his nose. Anderson works the radar, then shifts to visual and infrared search, mind syncing with his pilot in the practiced rhythm of countless training flights. Master arm on, Muczynski says, more to himself than anyone. Recommend Sparrow first. Good aspect. 3 miles. Decreasing. Anderson replies. The Tomcat shudders slightly as Muczynski pulls into a high angle of bank, swinging the nose to cut across the Su-22's path. The horizon tilts. The sea becomes a blue wall, then a floor again. The Su-22 pilot glances over his shoulder. For a beat, he sees nothing but empty sky. Then, a gray shape grows in his peripheral vision, wings wide, twin tails like a predatory fork. The American is not running. The American is turning in. Fox 1. Muczynski calls, thumb pressing the release. An AIM-7 Sparrow drops free from the Tomcat's belly, motor igniting a heartbeat later in a burst of smoke and flame. It lances forward, nose seeking the radar energy, painting the Libyan fighter on the Soviet-tracked scopes. One of the American symbols brightens, indicating a radar lock. A thin line appears between it and a Libyan return, the system's way of showing a missile shot. The advisors exchange quick looks. This is happening faster than their training scenarios ever suggested. In the open sky, the Sparrow closes the distance in seconds. The Libyan lead banks hard right, trying to drag the missile into a turn it cannot quite manage. For a moment it seems the Sukhoi might escape. Then the missile corrects. Nose slewing in. There is a sharp flash of white, a blooming sphere of fire. Fragments spinning outward like angry sparks. From Fast Eagle 102, the Su-22 seems to crumple in mid-air. The tail section shears off. A wing tumbles away. A tiny black speck ejects from the fireball, the pilot punching out as his aircraft disintegrates over the Gulf. "Splash one fitter," Anderson says. Voice flat with professional confirmation. Good hit. In the Libyan control room, the symbol of the first Su-22 flickers, then vanishes entirely from the radar display. The Soviet advisor feels his stomach tighten. One of their clients' front-line fighters, using Soviet weapons and doctrine, has just been erased in less than a handful of heartbeats. But it is not over. The second Su-22 is still in the fight, and Fast Eagle 107 is already sliding into position. Fast Eagle 107 slides out and up, just a little high and aft of the surviving Su-22 the way they have practiced 1,000 times over the training ranges back home. Kleeman keeps his voice level on the intercom. "Got the trailer. Visual. Left side." He is braking low. In his back seat, Venlet is already working the angles in his head. The Libyan wingman has watched his lead disintegrate in a blossom of fire. Instead of running, he banks sharply and dives, trying to get low, to trade altitude for speed, to use the dense air near the sea to his advantage. Copy. He is in a left-hand descending turn. Venlet calls. Let him commit. Then we roll in. From Fast Eagle 102, Muchinsky and Anderson watch the fight unfold. Their Tomcat carves a wide turn, keeping them in a cover position. They are ready if the Libyan tries something desperate. Down below, the Su-22 claws toward the deck. The Mediterranean rushes up, its surface a dazzling, blinding mirror. The Libyan pilot shoves the throttle forward, feels the airframe rumble as his jet knifes along just a few hundred feet above the waves. On the Libyan scope, the controllers see the second Su-22 drop in altitude. The Soviet advisors lean closer. The altimeter readouts spit numbers that sink fast, then stabilize low. One of the advisors mutters under his breath, half impressed, half anxious. He's going for the deck, mask himself in sea clutter. If the Americans lose lock, he may escape. But the F-14 is not relying on radar alone now. Kleeman rolls 107 into a descending turn, nose tracing a path that will cut inside the Su-22's circle. The G-forces squeeze his chest. His helmet presses against the headrest. The horizon tilts, then steadies as he finds the sweet spot. Got him on the nose. Range decreasing. Venlet reports. Sidewinder shot is good. High to low, left to right. Recommend heat seeker. Kleeman glances at the weapons panel. AM-9 ready. The Sidewinder's seeker head, caged for the moment, hungers for hot exhaust. He thumb-selects the weapon, and the cockpit fills with the insistent, rising growl of the tone in his headset. The Su-22's engine is a bright, burning beacon in the Sidewinder's narrow world. Tone is good. Locked on. Venlet says. Outside. The geometry is deadly and simple. The Su-22 runs along the water, trying to stay fast and low. Above and slightly behind, Fast Eagle 107 arcs in nose just ahead of the Libyan's tail. In 3 dimensions, the Tomcat is drawing a tight spiral that will end with steel teeth snapping shut. On the carrier, in the air ops room, someone starts marking the time. From the moment the Libyans fired their first missile to now, only seconds have passed. Voices speak in clipped phrases, tracking altitude, bearing, weapons free status. Back in the Libyan control room, the second Su-22 symbol seems, for a heartbeat, to gain separation. The distance line between it and the nearest American fighter begins to lengthen. A Libyan controller almost smiles. Then the line bends again. The American icon shifts, tightening the chase. Fox 2. Kleeman calls, the words smooth, almost calm. An AIM-9 Sidewinder drops from the rail with a brief jolt, its motor spitting fire as it accelerates. The missile turns almost the instant it leaves the rail, arcing down toward the heat plume pouring from the Su-22's exhaust. From the Tomcat cockpit, The missile is a bright thread curling through the blue. From the Soviet-advised radar scopes, it is nothing at all. Only the behavior of the targets hints at what is happening. The American keeps closing. The Libyan starts to jink, desperate, pulling up, then down, hoping to throw off a weapon he cannot see near the surface. The Su-22 banks hard, trying one last violent turn. The Sidewinder rides the heat, ignoring everything else. It dives in, closing the final hundreds of meters in a blur of speed. There is a flash against the water. A tight, furious fireball blooms at the jet's tail, then rips forward. The Su-22 breaks apart, scattering burning debris that tumbles toward the sea in a long, falling arc. "Splash 2, Venlet says quietly. Second fitter is down. On the carrier's tactical plot, both Libyan returns vanish in quick succession. The timekeeper looks at the marks on his pad and feels a chill. From first Libyan missile launch to the destruction of the second Sukhoi, about 45 seconds have passed. In the Libyan operations room, silence falls. The Soviet advisors stare at the scope, where the air picture has abruptly simplified. 2 F-14 symbols. No Libyan fighters. No American losses. One of the Libyan officers whispers. Both gone. Both. The senior Soviet advisor does not answer. His face is drawn tight, eyes fixed on the empty patch of sky in front of the Tomcats. He has just watched one of the most ruthless and efficient air-to-air engagements he has ever seen, and it was over in less than a minute. The wreckage of the second Su-22 is still tumbling into the sea when the radios crackle back to life with controlled, business-like voices. Fast Eagle 102 confirmed 2 bandits splash. Comes the controller from the carrier group. Mochinsky answers, breathing hard behind the oxygen mask. Affirm, 1 by Sparrow, 1 by Sidewinder from Fast Eagle 107. No damage to friendlies. Fast Eagle 107 slides into loose formation off his right. From Kliman's cockpit, the sky once charged with danger suddenly feels spacious and strangely empty. A moment ago it was filled with threat and intent. Now only contrails and fading smoke marks remain. Venlet scans the surrounding air, helmet moving in smooth arcs. No additional contacts. Skies clear, he reports. Recommend we reset and RTB. The Tomcats bank gently, turning back toward the distant smudge of the carrier group on the horizon. The wings sweep forward for cruise, tip lights winking faintly in the fierce midday glare. The adrenaline that had sharpened every movement begins to ebb, leaving a wired, humming alertness in its wake. On the American carrier, the Combat Information Center is a dim, cool world of green-lit displays and murmured confirmations. Radar operators track the icons tagged as Fast Eagle 102 and 107 as they head home. A young officer at the plotting table traces their path with a grease pencil, the line curving away from the spot where the 2 Libyan symbols vanished. Time from first Libyan shot to splash 2, 45 seconds, someone says quietly. It is almost a note to self, but everyone within earshot hears it. In the ready room below decks, pilots and RIOs not on this mission listen to the live feed on speakers bolted to the bulkhead. Coffee cups sit forgotten on the table. A few heads shake. Not in disbelief exactly, but in the sober recognition of what their training has been for. They actually fired first, a junior pilot mutters. Damn, that is that. Then, on the other side of the Mediterranean, in the Libyan operations room, the atmosphere could not be more different. The air is thick with heat and the smell of sweat and cigarette smoke. The radar scope that moments ago displayed 4 moving symbols now shows only 2. The Libyan controller, who had nearly smiled, stares at the empty part of the screen as if willing the missing blips to reappear. They must be jamming, he protests weakly. There could be a malfunction. The senior Soviet advisor steps closer to the scope, hands clasped tightly behind his back. His face is expressionless. but his jaw muscles work. "No," he says in carefully measured Russian-accented Arabic. "The American fighters are still painting clean. Your aircraft have ceased transmitting. Their transponders are gone. So are their radar returns." He does not add the conclusion that hangs in the air they are no longer aircraft, only falling scrap metal and parachutes. A second Soviet, younger, leans over the console, eyes flicking between range markers and bearing numbers. "Look at the geometry," he says in Russian, low enough that only his compatriot hears. The Americans were defensive for seconds only. They turned that around into 2 kills almost immediately. He taps a finger at the screen. Here, the first lock. Then here, the second. They coordinated, covered each other. Textbook. The older advisor listens in silence. He had seen diagrams of the F-14 in intelligence briefings, heard about the AWG-9 radar and paired missile systems. On paper. The Tomcat was an impressive air superiority fighter, but paper is hypothetical. What just happened in the sky over Sidra is not. Reaction time. Impeccable, he says at last. No hesitation after engagement order. Their crews are well drilled. A Libyan officer, his face flushed, slams a palm against the side of a console. Our pilots did as instructed. They challenged. They fired first. The Su-22 is not a toy. How can they lose both? Just like that. The older Soviet turns to him. Your pilots did not maneuver aggressively enough before launch. They closed head-on against fighters optimized for that fight. They did not break, did not force the Americans to waste time repositioning. And once the missiles were in the air, they tried to outturn rather than deny the missile its guidance. He pauses, glancing back at the scope, at the 2 solitary American symbols drifting away from the fight. Understand this. Those F-14 crews have trained for exactly this scenario, perhaps hundreds of times. Today, they simply flew the script they already knew. In the cool, fluorescent quiet of the American carrier's intelligence spaces, the fight over Sidra is already being replayed from every angle. Tapes from the F-14 cockpits are pulled, labeled, and slid into machines that spill scratchy radio traffic and intercom chatter into the room. Video from heads-up sights and radar displays flickers on monitors. Paused frames show distant specks turning into recognizable silhouettes of Su-22s, then fireballs. Muchinsky and Anderson sit at a narrow table. Flight gear half shed, still smelling faintly of jet fuel and sweat. A squadron intelligence officer, legal pad in hand, starts walking them through the engagement second by second. "Confirm. Libyan lead fired first." "Correct," he asks. "Yes." "Visual on smoke trail from under his wing." Anderson replies, "Call was missile launch. Then we executed break, came back around, and took the shot when cleared." Kleeman and Venlet stand nearby, arms folded, drifting closer when the timeline reaches the moment Fast Eagle 107 fired its Sidewinder. The intelligence officer makes notes as they speak. "You felt he was trying to escape low?" the officer asks Venlet. "He tried to drag it out on the deck." Venlet says, "We had a clean geometry from above and behind. Sidewinder had solid tone the whole way. No indication he tried flares or any kind of serious break until the last second." On a monitor, a freeze frame shows the Su-22 in its final turn, the white line of the missile streaking in from above. Someone whistles softly, then stops. Glancing at the air wing commander lurking in the back, the commander speaks at last. "This is what we train for." He says, "You followed rules of engagement, reacted appropriately, stayed in control. 2 aggressors down, no losses." His expression is grave, not celebratory. There will be political noise, but tactically, this is clean. A yeoman steps in, hands the commander a message. "Print out." He reads, then folds it carefully. Word is already moving. He says, "Washington will have this within the hour." Across the sea, in a stark concrete building where the Libyan and Soviet personnel share an uneasy partnership, another kind of debrief has begun. The older Soviet advisor sits at a cluttered table, a stack of radar printouts and handwritten logs in front of him. A bare bulb buzzes overhead. The air is thick and heavy, but he has shrugged off his tunic, rolled his sleeves, and dived into the work. "Let us reconstruct," he tells the Libyan officers. His tone clipped. They spread out range and bearing plots, tracing the engagement. Pens carve lines in red and blue ink, showing flight paths. The advisor marks the point where the Libyan lead fired his missile. "Here. Range too great for a reliable hit without surprise. Your pilot telegraphed his intent by holding a straight nose on approach. The Americans saw him, maneuvered, and defeated the shot with a single break." He jabs the paper at the next point in time. Here is the first American lock. Note how quickly they transitioned from defensive to offensive. No hesitation. They trusted their radar, their weapons, and each other. A Libyan colonel leans in. "We have flown these Su-22s in exercises for years. They are not clumsy. They are not helpless. No one is saying they are," the Soviet replies. "But your doctrine put them into a head-on intercept with superior fighters. The Su-22 is a strike aircraft that can fight. The F-14 is a fighter that lives for this." He glances at his younger compatriot, who has been quietly calculating. "What is your assessment?" the older man asks. The younger Soviet taps a series of numbers. From missile launch to first kill, less than 30 seconds. From there to second kill, perhaps 15 more. Their crew coordination is tight. Radar lock, sparrow shot, then immediate handoff to the wingman for the sidewinder solution. He looks up, eyes serious. If this is representative of their carrier air wings, then any frontal confrontation between our export fighters and their fleet defense fighters at similar ranges will favor them. Heavily, silence settles over the room. The Libyan colonel's expression hardens. "You think our pilots are incompetent," he said. The older Soviet shakes his head once. "I think your pilots were brave and insufficiently prepared for this opponent. I also think our side underestimated how quickly the Americans can turn their training into real results." He gathers the papers, stacking them with care. "We will report that our systems functioned, that your pilots engaged, and that the Americans achieved 2 kills in under a minute with no losses. In Moscow, they will read this and draw their own conclusions about the F-14 and the men who fly it. Outside, the evening call to prayer drifts faintly through open windows, a distant, mournful sound over a day that has just rewritten expectations in the sky over Sidra. Night settles over the carrier in a patchwork of red-lit passageways and flood-lit decks. On the flight deck, Fast Eagle 102 and 107 sit in silence, their canopies dark, wings folded, stained with salt and the faint soot of burned JP-5. The roar and rush of launch and recovery have quieted. For the moment, the sea is just a slow, dark swell around the steel island. In the ready room, the mood is eased. The air stinks of coffee, sweat, and the faint tang of hydraulic fluid clinging to flight suits. A replay of the heads-up display footage flickers on a bulkhead screen. Silent, green crosshairs sliding across the ghostly shapes of the Su-22s. Look at that timing. Arayo remarks softly, "First shot, then the follow-up. Could not script it better." Muchinsky sits with his harness half undone, a paper cup in his hand, eyes fixed on the footage. He knows every frame already. But seeing it from this angle makes it feel almost like someone else's fight. Anderson leans back beside him, arms crossed, the hint of a tired smile tugging under his mask lines. Kleeman and Venlet stand in the back, pretending not to watch themselves on the screen. When the moment comes where 107 rolls in for the sidewinder shot, the room goes quiet. The tiny white line of the missile arcs toward the fitter, The fireball blooms, and the Su-22 vanishes. 45 seconds. Someone says again. From the moment they tried to kill us, the Air Wing commander steps forward, kills the playback. You will give your statements, and Higher will do what Higher always does. Investigations, press releases, carefully chosen words. He scans the room, meeting the eyes of the men who will go back up tomorrow. We did not come looking for a fight, but if they come again, you know exactly what you can do. On land, in Tripoli, a very different sort of meeting unspools behind closed doors. In a cramped office lined with shelves of binders and maps, the senior Soviet advisor sits at a wooden desk and a thin sheet of paper in his typewriter. Each keystroke is deliberate, each sentence weighed. He writes in Russian, his phrasing careful. The report is for eyes far above his rank. He notes the date, time, place, identifies the Libyan aircraft as Su-22 export variants, the American fighters as F-14 Tomcats, records that the Libyans initiated the engagement, fired first, and lost both aircraft in under a minute to AIM-7 and AIM-9 missile shots. He hesitates before the next line, then writes what he knows Moscow will be most interested in. American carrier-based fighter crews demonstrated rapid reaction, superior situational awareness, effective use of radar, guided and heat-seeking missiles, and excellent mutual support. Engagement outcome suggests a significant qualitative edge in training and tactics. Across the desk, the younger advisor reads over a separate sheet full of numbers and notes. If we had been in those cockpits, he says quietly, we might have made different decisions, broken sooner, forced a merge, tried to deny the Sparrow a clean shot. The older man nods. Perhaps, but that is not the point. He removes the page from the typewriter, adds it to the growing stack. The point is that the Americans have shown their hand. This is how they will fight at the edge of their fleets. In the weeks that follow, the story of the Gulf of Sidra incident spreads in fragments and echoes. Libyan officials speak of aggression and violation. American spokesmen talk about self-defense and rules of engagement. Somewhere along the way, as newspapers and commentators reshape the narrative, the Su-22s become MiGs in the popular imagination, the shorthand for Soviet-built fighters falling quickly to American missiles. In quiet offices in Moscow, officers and engineers read the advisor's reports with furrowed brows. They underline phrases about reaction time, crew coordination, missile performance. Some argue that with better training, export pilots could do better. Others see a more uncomfortable truth sketched in thin black ink that under the cold mathematics of radar, speed, and practiced teamwork, the Tomcat has shown what it was built to do. Back on the carrier, the sea rolls on under a hard, bright sky. The incident is already being folded into briefing slides and training lectures. For the men who flew it, it is less a legend than a vivid memory of noise, speed, and a handful of rushed decisions made in the space of less than a minute. Yet somewhere, in the mind of a Soviet advisor who stood over a Libyan radar scope that day, the image will not quite fade. 4 symbols racing together. A sudden flash of engagement, and then, in under 45 seconds, 2 of them simply gone, far above the Gulf of Sidra. The sky is empty again. But from that brief, violent encounter, a new shadow stretches out across planning rooms and briefing halls on both sides of the Cold War. It has the shape of a twin-tailed fighter, its wings swept wide, its claws of Sparrow and Sidewinder ready, waiting for the next time someone chooses to test its reach.